Hey everybody, welcome to the Irresistible Brand Podcast. I am Matt Deutschman. I'm the owner of Doubletake Promotional Marketing. And since 2010, we've been helping colleges and universities and corporations in various industries with promotional products and branded merchandise. And over the years, the four key strategic initiatives we typically support with promotional products are client appreciation, referral generation, employee engagement and retention, and recruiting and onboarding. Companies that execute these four areas well develop an irresistible brand, which clients can't help but refer to others, employees can't help but promote, and recruits can't wait to join. Thus, the Irresistible Brand Podcast, where I talk with other leaders in those key strategic areas. I'm really excited to be joined right now by Bob Lambert, founding partner of Samurai Business Group. Bob is a dynamic, high-energy executive with a solid record of leading and building successful businesses, generating millions of dollars in revenue and growing profits. He has over 40 years of experience in strategic business development, marketing, and sales for Global 50, Fortune 500 companies, and he is also the founder of 4 successful entrepreneurial startup companies. So most specifically, he's the founding partner of the Samurai Business Group, a sales and business development performance firm that has developed revolutionary, results-driven sales and sales management mastery programs. At Samurai, they offer entrepreneurs, individuals, small mid-market companies and their teams advanced business development and sales skills training. And most of their clients report that they've doubled and tripled top-line revenue within 12 to 18 months. Bob likes to say that at Samurai Business Group, they put the win back in your sales. So Bob, thanks so much for joining me. Really excited for our conversation.
Wow, I was impressed with that. I want to buy from that guy.
Right. Yeah. Easy for me to say a lot of it. Right. Well, I just want to throw this out to you first. We're talking about irresistible brands. What does the concept of an irresistible brand mean to you?
Well, to me, the concept of an irresistible brand is when you grab people emotionally. When you look at any kind of advertising, any kind of brand, it resonates with somebody emotionally first. And that's really what's important. It's not about how you do something, everything else. It's really how do you connect with somebody that makes it so irresistible. You think about the brands that you love, the ones you buy, what makes those irresistible to you, and what, and it begins all the way back from my marketing chops way back when I was with Nestle. It was about getting to that consumer, drawing them into the store. So when they're standing, in front of the products that are displayed, my competitors and ours, what would make them reach in and buy our product? And that's really the essence of it. Also, you're a brand representative. To me, irresistible means you. I have to coach my clients a lot on the fact that you are the brand. That's who they see first. That's who they're connecting with first. If it's an in-person meeting or if it's Zoom or whatever it might be, and you really need to be the personification of that, whatever that might be.
Yeah, I think you hit on something pretty profound there. That with both of those points, that it's an emotional connection, and that it's when you say you are the brand, that's not just for business owners or for right. A leader or manager. It's everyone within an organization is a representative of the brand. And so that's what we get at when we're talking about, employee engagement and retention and recruiting. Those are things that, that touch the entirety of an organization. And, we in our promotional products business, what I often have to, I want to say like either coach clients or just kind of remind people about is that your brand is not just your logo. It's not just, a product that your logo is on, or it's not just what your website looks like. Your brand is everything. It's every way in which you interact with anyone, any way that your brand is coming in contact with the public and with your employees, with your customers, prospective customers, with your community. So everyone within an organization is a brand ambassador. And how they're
and you can point to some really great consumer brands, obviously, that are consistent what they do. I've heard this just the other day. Somebody was recanting the folks about McDonald's. No matter where, and he traveled extensively, no matter where he went into McDonald's, it was always the same, and the consistency of that, the messaging, and you just look at some of that stuff, with that experience. Look what Starbucks did for, $5 for brown water. It's like, it was the experience, right? It's the experience about going into a Starbucks and being a part of that. And it's the same thing. Now, B2B is a little different ballgame, right? How do you experience a business to business product or a service, right? And often, as I tell people, a product's one thing because you can see it and you can see if that's going to perform or whatever, But when you start looking at and how that plays out as far as the brand promise, is that going to work? When I turn the phone on, when I buy a computer, whatever it might be, is it performing the way that is living up to the expectation of the promise you've made to me? Mm-hmm. Service is even tougher because that is a great deal of trust, because when are you going to find out if it works or not? It's going to be down the road a ways. And so brand with that is really important. Every interaction that you have, everything you do with the customer or the prospect, that's all leading up to, hopefully a positive result. And that's going to be that they're going to buy from you. But it doesn't stop with that. You have to perform with excellence. You have to underpromise and overdeliver. That's all part of the brand and the execution all the way along with that. Are you living up to the expectation, the promise that you created for the customer? Salespeople often are very good at painting that picture, but then how about downstream, when it comes to the delivery of that?
Sure.
And you said something really good, and I think you're right, though. Yeah, the logo represents that, might be catchy, a catchphrase or something like that, what might get people leaning into it. Maybe a brief description about what it, the benefit of it, features, benefits, or something like that. But, how many times have we been disappointed with something that's got catchy phrases and catchy stuff, and all of a sudden it doesn't live up to what it said it was? Or you got a sales rep that's making a lot of tall promises, and then all of a sudden, it falls flat. I don't know about you, but I've been the recipient of that.
Well, and that's indicative of marketing misalignment with the delivery, with execution, with
right.
With the product in a sense. And I think that in some ways that goes along with what you said. In a B2B setting, there's more trust involved, and in a service business, there's more trust involved with the deliverable rather than just the product. It is what it is. The product can stand for itself at face value. Right. And so I would even say that problem resolution and how an organization handles problem resolution is a key component of their brand and what their brand stands for, because that can be one of the more meaningful, memorable experiences that a client may, unfortunately have. But, one of our philosophies of problem resolution at my company is, number one, that anyone can cause a problem. It's how you solve it that matters. And right. Number two, that a problem arising is actually an opportunity, because you can actually build an even stronger relationship with a client from having something go awry and fixing it really well, than if everything just went according to plan in the first place. Yeah,
you leave them smiling, leave them like, wow, that was an extraordinary experience, because it doesn't take much today to be good. I mean, it's really unfortunate, but some of this experience that customers have is just horrific, and it doesn't take that much. But, to your point, though, you have to have employees that are engaged, and that gets back to what you said, drawing the right kind of people towards you, recruiting, what does your brand represent? If you do turn somebody down, how well do you do that? So that they feel that, okay, it wasn't right for me, but I like that company. I wish I could go back to work. And I've heard that before, where people might be turned down for a job at a particular company that they wanted to go to, but they really loved the company because of the way they were treated and the way that, they responded to things, and then ending up a couple of years later actually going to work for it, because they weren't letting go of it. They liked it that much. I think that's when you've arrived.
I know that you've worked with organizations in the past, training members of an organization across different departments.
Yes.
And so to your point that you were just making, like how important is it for all individuals with an organization to understand where they fit into the bigger picture? And so kind of how does training and setting forth an overall company culture impact that? And then how does that in turn impact the company's brand and how that brand is represented to outsiders?
Well, that's the golden question that everybody's asking today, Matt, is culture. But, it's really about how the employees feel and are they engaged? I've told a couple stories about that, where we believe anybody, when I take an assignment to go into company, we go across the board with the company, who touches the customer. Okay. So we believe that anybody that touches that customer is in business development. They're a brand ambassador. They're in business development. And so that could be inside sales, outside sales, customer service, project management, sales engineers, sales enablement, marketing, any of those. So if they're going to be involved in any way of touching the customer, then we believe that we have something in our, training that does that. And overall, it creates a whole conversation, a way of speaking, a way of understanding that. And I have to tell you, we've experienced some really incredible things particularly with the young lady recently in customer service. Really took the training to heart. Start asking some questions down instead of just head down, solving problems and taking care of the customer, because that's a deep relationship oftentimes in a company. It's a really meaningful one. So all of a sudden she lifts her head up and starts asking some general questions that we had, given her some training on. And all of a sudden uncovers an opportunity, that the outside rep didn't even know about, right? Well, through that questioning technique and in the process and the techniques that we give them in the system, all of a sudden she's able to articulate that to the outside rep. He goes in and, a couple months later, that turns into a $300,000 piece of business. Wow. Well, I got to tell you something. She's thrilled out of her mind because she feels a part of this thing. Plus, I went back to management and said, "You're going to put a little extra in her paycheck, right?" And then I went back to the rep and I said, "You are writing her a check, right?" Because she really, it just lifted her up. I mean, it was unbelievable. So when people can be engaged like that in a company, I wish I had a magic answer for you about the culture, because that's the $64,000 question.
Well, I think there's something unmistakable about a positive culture that you can't always put your finger on, and you can't. There's no if everybody knew exactly what to do, everybody would be doing it, right? It's not like It's not as simple as just like do this, this, and this, and you've got yourself a positive culture. But clearly, that company was doing something right for the woman in customer service to be not only motivated enough, but also just for her to be an advocate enough for the organization for which she's working to make that extra effort and take that extra step to do a little bit of digging, ask those, I'm sure, Socratic questions, right? Yep. Like something a little open-ended to understand the customer relationship further, rather than just kind of checking the boxes of like the task at hand in her day-to-day job. She had to care about her company and want it to be successful. So they were doing something to create that foundation.
Well, it all points back to leadership. The leader is all in with the customer experience. I mean, that was a whole theme through 2 years now. And so that was the enablement right there that they saw. That they also didn't see training as an event. They see it as an ongoing process, to elevate everybody within the company. And the fact too, that they're growing. And one thing they're very understanding of, to be able to perpetuate a good, positive culture, you have to continually keep working in that, because as you get bigger, you can lose it. Okay. And we've seen that happen. And so that leadership is really key. They're buying in, they're in all the training. First of all, we make it mandatory. If leaders aren't in the room and through the training or something, I won't take the assignment, because they have to be bought into this and they have to reinforce it when I'm not around, and eventually take it over, and be responsible for it. So, that's a key piece.
So leadership being invested in customer experience, and just the kind of overall concept of training not being an event. I love what you said there, that training is not an event, it's an ongoing process. And that probably means that, if I had to guess, the leaders are in training and doing a lot for their own personal professional development as well. They're not just, they're not just creating settings where their teams can learn more and advance their professional education. The leaders are probably bettering themselves on an ongoing basis.
Well, and that's what I admire about you. You're doing you're personification of that. You're constantly sharpening the saw. We've had conversations about this, Matt, and you've taken it upon yourself to get coaching, get mentoring, elevate your game up. And that's reflective in your organization all the way down, because when the leader gets better, everybody gets better.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's but I think that certainly resonates. The idea of training being ongoing for all of us, for life,
Yep.
and everyone, particularly leadership, being invested in customer experience, understanding what things look like from the customer's standpoint, and doing whatever we can to improve that, and also use those experiences as areas to identify further opportunity.
Yeah. And I can tell you another one we talked about a little bit was customer evangelism. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, I got to tell you, and I've been through a lot of extensive training and everything. I never was taught on this at all. How do you create customer evangelists? So I think that's one of the point of distinctions that we have in the program that we very intentionally, and I authored it, and I wanted to make sure that that was a part of what we taught in the approach we taught. And that is oftentimes what I find is people leave it up to the customer to figure it out that they're good. They're naturally going to talk about them. Wrong. They got better things that they're doing right now to be worrying about your business and how to evangelize you, okay, or even talk about you. You have to earn chips with them. And first of all, you got to make sure that you are at a 10, that they consider you being the best in class, that you're doing the job, that you're working with them. And I always, prompt my clients to ask one really important question. If there was one thing we could do better, what would that be? And that should be a constant question, checking in with the customer. How are we doing? If there's one thing we could do better, what would that be? Okay. Once you've earned the chips, what we call chips, you got to be able to cash those in. And cashing those in then basically is at that point is saying, hey, most of the clients that I get are through people like you that refer me on to other people and give me introductions to other people. You got to ask. You can't assume that they're going to figure this out or that they're thinking about you all the time. You have to be proactive and ask. And that's where I see the biggest failure oftentimes is just not asking. You'll be surprised what happens when you ask.
Yeah, I think so. So one thing that a big takeaway from what you just said, it's subtle, but I think important, is that I think many of us often ask the question, hey, is there anything we could be doing better? Or is there any area that you're not being served that that we could do better? But the nuance in the language of saying, what's one thing, if there's one thing we can do better, what would that be? Yeah. That's giving that's the specificity, I think, improves the likelihood that you're going to get a real meaty answer. Yep. And because you're not leaving it at, there's sometimes where you want to be as open-ended as possible. That's not one of them. Because you want an answer and you don't want, you don't want fluff. And then I'd say the other thing, just in terms of you mentioned, telling the customer what types of opportunities you're looking for, and then asking them if they know anybody, or asking them, asking for that referral, for that evangelism, so to speak. I think what's important in there also is when you have an ideal client, letting them know that they're an ideal client. And that their profile is ideal for you also. That shouldn't be something that's taken for granted, and shouldn't be something that's just assumed that they know, because that's where other opportunities often lie also. Who else do you know who's kind of like you? Right. So, well,
the other thing too, just to speak to your what you do, Matt, and that's really the reinforcing part of that relationship. You show that they're appreciated. You don't have to wait till Christmas or holiday to give them something, a representation of that. It doesn't have to be ostentatious. It could be just a simple thing that, and particularly with what I know about you, is making it personal, to that client, or something, a hobby, an interest, or whatever that might be, and certainly the more personalized you can make it. Wow. I've had compliments come back to me time and time again. If there was a book they were reading or something that was going on, or an item that I knew that they prized or that they collected, or whatever the case might be, and be able to make that as a gift to them. I can tell you one of the cherished gifts that I was given was a Mont Blanc pencil, a mechanical pencil, was given to me by a gentleman for Switzerland. And that was a representation to him of when we sign contracts, when we write deals, that even though if it might be in ink, oftentimes he knows that I can change it if it's in pencil.
I like that, because I've had people before who say, I want my pens. I give the pen to the person when they sign the deal. But but the fact that it's actually specifically in pencil, it shows a little bit different dynamic. So Well, yeah, and that's what do they call it? The platinum rule. The golden rule is do unto others as you want to be treated. The platinum rule, do unto others as they want to be treated.
Yeah, exactly.
So that
absolutely,
is incorporated with gifting also. It's not, if you think something would be a cool gift, get it for yourself. Get something that you think they would enjoy as a gift, right? So, I think so. Appreciation and obviously, we do promotional products, but the strategic initiative of client appreciation goes way beyond just promotional products. Promotional products is one tactic of many that can be part of the overarching mission of client appreciation, which then leads into customer evangelism and so on and so forth. And so all of these things are what formulates the irresistible brand, which is the ultimate goal and really the profile that we've kind of tapped into with strategic work.
And you think about this, in how I instruct also how to get quality introductions and quality referrals. Basically, you got to coach the client along the way too. Be specific. Who am I looking to who am I looking to meet? And then would that be something you'd be comfortable? When I say it to you, I might say it to you. Would that be a person you'd be comfortable in calling and seeing, making an introduction for me? Or if that's not, I always push for a lunch, a breakfast, a dinner, some way for us to get together physically. And then I coach you as to how that meeting goes. Okay. Now, if it's where you're going to send an email somebody, I'll send a couple sentences to you just so you don't have to try to think through writing it. It makes it easy for you. You can put stuff down there, put your own twist on it and get it off, copy me in, right? And those turn into meetings, generally speaking, because you're sending it to somebody that knows you and trusts you. And I'm playing off that halo of trust. Even when we meet in person, I'm going to coach you basically, if you're going to line up that meeting, I'm going to coach you basically, don't go into a sales mode on me. Tell them the person what you're doing and all that. It's not your job to sell it. And then basically turn it over to me. I'm also going to get you to excuse yourself a little bit early, because that person you've introduced me to, if it resonates with them, they might want to say a couple things, to me personally, privately, that they don't want you being a part of, so that's another little part of that thing as to how we kind of set it up so that we can have that kind of mutual bond. But, I've got to earn their trust. Just because you've introduced me doesn't, that's great. And it takes it up a whole different level, because the conversation starts at a different level.
Sure.
But then I have to be very cognizant of the fact that this isn't a done deal. I've still has to earn that person's trust. And so how I conduct myself, how I represent myself, and making sure that I keep our relationship whole every step of the way, that I'm not going to do something that's going to soil your reputation. Okay. And be very mindful of that. And there's things that don't work out. I get it. That's fine. But I want to leave that, the reputation and the relationship you and I have, if somebody's doing that for me, whole, no matter what that is.
I think, the big takeaway from that I think anyone, watching or listening could gain from is that, we're all, all business leaders, entrepreneurs, people in business development capacity, are looking for referrals and are looking for strategic introductions and are trying to build those strategic partnerships that result in business referrals. It's ultimately, everybody's different. So it's incumbent upon us as people in a business development capacity to train those around us on how best to set up, to have us identify and then set up opportunities for us. And not everybody's going to be the same, but it's kind of incumbent upon us, if we want it to be done in a way that's going to be most conducive for us, and then also to be respectful of the best way to introduce those relationships, given that
because
these relationships are sensitive.
You don't want me jumping on somebody you got a great relationship and all of a sudden go into sales mode. My God, that's the worst thing you can possibly do. So and you really also discovery conversation. That's all a part of that. How does a discovery conversation also represent brand, in brand building occasions? They're wonderful occasions, frankly, because that first meeting, first of all, you got to do your homework. You got to show up and do your homework. And that's the other thing that I push really hard with clients. you got to go out and, I mean, for God's sakes, at least do a LinkedIn on them and look and scrape in the web. But there's so many tools today that you can get an idea of what somebody's about. And so you're now, especially if it's a strategic one, if it's a C-suite introduction, if that's at that level, you better be pretty strategic and you better know what you're talking about. You don't have to be a subject matter expert, but you really do need to know how to ask a great question. Mm-hmm. And number 2 rule, shut up and listen. Because as I tell people, the customer, the client, the prospect will tell you everything you need to know to help them to buy from you if you just do those 2 things. Ask a great question and shut up and listen.
I mean, that's fantastic advice. And I think, like, kind of to round it out, like, you're in, someone's in a sales discovery meeting, and like, how can that, if I've got an irresistible brand, right? If my company is an irresistible brand, and I'm in that meeting, that's a sales opportunity for me, how can I already start to kind of build that brand advocacy relationship with that prospective client even before they become a client? Like, what can I be doing, or what activity resonates and really promotes that?
Well, again, you're the brand. Okay. You're the face of the company. You're the face of the brand. Okay. So how are you showing up? First of all, how you dressed? Okay. Are you showing up like you're serious? You want to do business? I'm not saying you got to put a suit and tie on and look like $1 million, but the fact of the matter is just the representation. The other thing I'm coaching a lot of people on right now is their Zoom presence. Do you have a professional background? Do you look like, your face is going in and out or whatever? People are expecting the game to be elevated now. And also, how are you showing up? Making sure you're ahead of time, Lombardi time. If you were 10 minutes early, you were late, right? And being there on time, being prepared, and think through this. Discovery is going on both sides of the table. Okay. But you are being judged. As everybody says, that first 10 seconds, you're being judged, you're being put in a box, right? And so you are the personification of your brand, whatever that might be. The brand conversation and the reinforcement of that is really about what's in their best interest. What are they looking to do? What's important to them? Okay. Mm-hmm. And then with that is basically saying, well, if there's a way that we could solve that problem, is that something that would really resonate for you? Because people I sit across the table from are asking themselves 3 basic questions. All of us do, right? You're going to make me money, save me time or money, or make me look good. Okay. I did a lot of business in corporate when I was in corporate sales with making people look good because it wasn't their money. Time was a nice thing to check off the box, that was effective, efficient with the time, but making them look good was my number 1, initiative. So to your point, brand, it's all about them, it's not about me. And also that you show up that you're competent, okay, in what you do say, that you show that you are competent. And frankly, the other thing I think is wonderfully, delightfully surprising, being authentic and saying, something, I don't know that. That's a great question. Can I get back to you about that? You don't have to have all the damn answers all the time. Mm-hmm. I think it's even more engaging when you can openly say, hey, nobody's asked me that question before. Let me do some homework on that for you. And can I get back to you?
Yeah. The humility is
absolutely.
It's reassuring. And it's humanizing. And it's also, to go back to the previous point about problem resolution, mm-hmm. showing that humility in sort of an innocuous situation like that, and not trying to pretend that you know everything. It just gives that person a sense of like, okay, I know I'm going to be working with someone who's real, and that's how they're going to handle any kind of difficult situation that may arise.
And again, I think that's the first job when you start talking about the brand, and people are attracted to that. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you say? I mean, people are attracted to that. Your brand's got to stand for something. And frankly, a promise is a promise not to be broken. I had that pounded into me as a kid by my father and grandfather, and so the biggest thing I see today is people just not living up to what they promise people to do. I mean, that's a pretty small hurdle, If you're going to make a promise, and by God, make sure that you do it, and that, it's not that complicated to me, Matt. It just isn't. I think we try to make things way overcomplicated today. If you can simplify things, first of all, it makes the client more comfortable. or the prospect more comfortable. That, yeah. The other thing is in those discovery conversations, reinforcing, what you think you're taking away with that, but also what I share with them is turn that into an emotional issue. So in other words, when somebody brings up, oh yeah, we're having this problem with so-and-so. So if I'm going to hear you properly, Matt, you're saying that, if this thing doesn't get fixed, this could be a pretty big problem and frankly could affect you personally, right? They're sitting there nodding, yeah, boy, that really could. What does that do for people? It means that you recognize me, you understand me, you heard me. And that's the number one issue today. The need to be understood. Ask any bartender, hairstylist or anybody, psychiatrist, psychologist, the need to be understood,
Yeah, I think, and that's a good place to end on. There's brilliance in simplicity. Yep. It's all about emotional connection and personal connection. That we talk about brands. When we talk about brands, the tendency can be to think of this, gigantic ephemeral thing. But at the end of the day, people buy from people, not companies, and people work for people, not companies. But the company is responsible for creating the setting that all the people kind of fall into. So that's where you get your irresistible brand from. So.
You said it. Couldn't have said it better myself. I couldn't have said any better, buddy. I evangelize that all the time because at the essence of it, that's what it's about. It's about people. When you look about a company, what is it? It's a legal entity, right? It's people that make up the company.
Right. Well, thanks a lot, Bob. I really appreciate that. Thanks for being on here as a guest. We're going to share your contact information for people who want to get in touch. Bob is an excellent business leader, sales trainer, customer evangelist, just really all around superb guy that I've really enjoyed getting to know over the last few years. And, we touch on, just to kind of round it out, Doubletake promotional marketing. We touch on these strategic initiatives. Obviously we do promotional products and branded merchandise. Those are the tactics that we do within our company, but the strategic initiatives are what really light us on fire, that really, get us excited. And those strategic initiatives that we help with are client appreciation, referral generation, employee engagement and retention, and recruiting and onboarding. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Irresistible Brand Podcast. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Again, I'm Matt Deutschman from Doubletake Promotional Marketing, where we specialize in promotional products and branded merchandise with a focus on the strategic initiatives of client appreciation, referral generation, employee engagement and retention, and recruiting and onboarding. Organizations that execute those areas well create an irresistible brand. If you haven't checked it out yet, visit doubleTakeBrandBarometer.com for our quick 5-minute assessment to see how well your organization performs in those areas and get some advice on where you can improve and where you can leverage existing strengths. Our mission is to help you make your brand irresistible. See you again next time.